That's okay, you can just meet.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Reston Association December 2017 Board of Directors meeting. I want to start out with some opening comments. The first is I want to say how impressed I was, although I couldn't attend the Reston parade that we had. I heard it was fabulous. It was the one thing I really wanted to get done in December, and I ended up with strep throat. So I didn't want to go and share that with everybody, so I did not go, but I heard it was fabulous. So I hope everybody felt the same. I think that's something we as a community should be proud of. I did get to participate, however, in a Friends of Reston fundraiser program that was just last weekend or the weekend prior, last weekend, where we stood out in the cold, although not super cold, not like tonight, and got little kids on a train that went around the Reston Town Center and raised money for camps for this summer. So a lot of fun. Amazing how the train came in, there was nobody there, and then all of a sudden, there's all these people on the train. And it happened every single train ride. There's nobody there, and then the train pulls up, and then everybody's there. Because I was thinking I was going to have fun with little kids in line, and none of that. They just whoosh, and then whoosh. It was like this thing, I don't know. But another great example of Reston community and being the Reston family that we are here. Also, this past Monday, let me get this right, the Coalition for Planned Reston met here in our Reston spaces, and another large group talking about what's going on with the zoning and the PRC zoning amendment and some of the comp plan. And like I said, it was another group, lots of yellow t-shirts out there. And I did want to say that we also met this week with Kathy Hudgens, and she has agreed to, actually not agree, we didn't ask her to, this is all on her, host some community meetings again after the first of the year to again continue this conversation with Reston about these zoning changes. And I am sure that John Carter, who's newly appointed planning commissioner for the Hunter Mill District, will also be in attendance. And he's a Restonian. He lives in the Lake Ann area, so we're glad he's on board to do that. So anyway, so I think those are all some key happenings that I'm aware of that made it onto my radar screen. And now I have an ask. So for all those things that we've done well, I have an ask of my fellow directors, and that is, I'm not an expert in Robert's rules. Some of you are, so I'm going to be asking for your help. We've had the last two meetings. I'm pretty strict on time. We've gone over time, and when you get home at midnight from a board meeting after you've been up since 5 in the morning, at some point in a board meeting, your brain starts to shut down, and I don't want us making key decisions on Reston and the affairs of this association when it's past like 10 o'clock. It's just not fair to the people we're trying to serve, because I know my brain is starting to turn to mush around 9. That's when I'm like usually heading to bed. So I really want to make us as efficient as we can. So I go back to a good old Robert's rules and say, how can it help? And so one of the things I want to try to do, and I need your help, is when a topic is ready for discussion, is a motion's made, somebody seconds it, that puts it on the table. We will go around. Any director that wishes to speak will have 10 minutes to speak once they're acknowledged. And we will go around, first round, and then we'll go around and you get 2 bites at the apple. After that, your part of the discussion is over, and we will go to and then if it is a vote needed to be taken, we will call for a vote. I just want to give that a go to see if it works and to keep us a little bit more rolling in our own discussions. So the crosstalk will be minimized. It will be eliminated, actually. So, David, you're a pro at this Robert's Rules stuff, so I'm going to be asking for your help. And John, aren't you a pro at this too? No. Who else? Who wants to raise their hand? Bowman?
Common sense.
Yeah, okay. No, there we go.
10 minutes?
Is that what we say?
That's the max.
You can take just 1 minute.
It seems like
By
a
10
lot.
minutes, I count really fast. Yeah, so
Maybe 2 minutes?
How about 3? That's what the community gets.
That's good.
I think it depends on the importance of the matter and the
Okay.
complexity of the matter,
Okay.
don't you?
Common sense.
Okay, all right. So anyway, I want to give this a go. So, and I'd be remiss if I didn't take a minute to just thank the Reston Association staff for the good work that they do every single day. I see the trucks out there. They're always out there working, leaf catching, and all kinds of things. And then the folks that are truly focused on our members. And I just want to thank them for staying focused over the holiday season and staying focused on our members and continuing to provide that service. It is recognized by the board. You are recognized and appreciated by this board of directors. And with that, because I won't have time at the end, because we all know how it gets at the end, I want to wish everybody in the Reston Association a very happy holiday and a joyous new year, and I hope you get to spend some quality time with family and friends over this time period. I leave for Florida tomorrow, so I'm feeling a little festive right now. So let's just get this show on the road. How about that?
All right, good.
Okay. So with that, are we ready to approve our agenda?
So move.
Second.
Any opposed? Passed. Without objection. Yeah, there's that word. Thanks for being here, Mr. Chadwick. Keep me straight. Okay, then on to the consent calendar. We have a motion
Move to
Yep,
accept.
move to accept. Second.
without objection.
Yep.
All right, we're rocking. Okay. We are down to member comments. I didn't pull the list, but we could just ask whoever signed up.
Lisa's getting it
Okay.
right now.
Well, I know this gentleman was the first one in the room, so I'm sure if he signed up, he was the first one on the list.
Right.
So, again, just as a reminder, you have 3 minutes, and Kate will give you a TikTok or something happens at the 3-minute mark, a big like lightning bolt or something happens, and that will be your cue to wrap up your final thought. So with that, sir, if you could just state your name and your address.
My name is Jeremy Novak. I've lived in 2005 Halyard Lane in Lakesboro for 37 years. I'm here to recommend that a Lakes Committee be established and be made up of lakefront property owners to review and interpret rules for boats, dock, design, and using the lakes. There are approximately 635 waterfront homes on 4 lakes in Reston, and several hundred additional families with direct lake access to each cluster. These residents have boats, docks, and use for recreation throughout the year. There have been changes in the way many homeowners build and use boats and docks on the lake. 35 years ago, they were fixed docks with toe-set concrete and only pontoon boats. Many of these docks have been destroyed by the lake level going up and down 2 to 3 feet and the ice sheets when they freeze on the lake. Also, currently, pontoon boats cost approximately $10,000 and are too expensive for many lake residents. Now we have floating dock boats and floating docks. The dock boats allow more recreational use of the lake at half the cost. These floating docks can move up and down with the water. They are not affected by the ice sheet.
Can you put your microphone on? They can't hear
There.
you. Yeah, they can't hear you out in,
La La Land.
out in the, yeah.
We can hear you.
We can hear you, yes.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
It's not your
Our
fault.
fault.
Although the purpose of the Reston Association is to serve the residents, it seems that the watershed management staff make up new rules and enforce procedures without consulting or having concern for the residents of the lake. The problem may be that the lake rules are made up and enforced by staff who don't live on the lake, don't have boats on the lake, and don't have first-hand expertise of boat and dock design and function. It also seems that there is no one on the Covenants Committee who lives on the lake, and as far as I know, none of you members on the board live on the lake either. Although many residents have boats and docks for over 30 to 40 years, many do not meet the new enforcement requirements that the watershed staff is providing. Last year, when I came to this board, the watershed management were trying to enforce boat motor rules that have made no sense and were created without input for lakefront homeowners. Enforcement of these rules has been suspended, although the rules haven't changed. This year, the watershed management are enforcing dock and boat rules that are out of date and again, without input from lakefront residents. 6 dock owners and 6 owners from several lakes have contacted me while they're trying to deal with the watershed management new dock requirements. I hereby volunteer to be on the Lakes Committee. I've had experience rebuilding several cluster docks, building and rebuilding bulkheads. I've built, repaired, and invented over 50 pontoon boats and dock boats on Reston lakes. As a stopgap measure and until the committee is created and rules are reviewed, enforcement of boat dock requirements must be suspended. Thank you.
Look at that for timing.
Thank you.
Impressive.
I practiced at home.
Nicely done.
Can you pass your notes?
Yeah, I can give
That would
some
be
copy of
good. Yep, thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
Thank you for that information.
Thank you.
And,
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for offering to chair the committee if it were to be established.
I had helped with developing the rules for the boats whenever they were developed years ago, but that was the last time, except for Reston Association and residents calling me up for advice, that any rules have been reviewed by anybody who lives on the lakes.
Thank you.
And I got the number from counting every residence on Reston Lake very properly.
Addie?
Yep. Patty Benza, I live in the Wedgewood cluster, and the only reason I'm here is to say thank you. I spent the last 9 months trying to learn what your organization does. I retired 2 years ago from working full-time, and I made a personal commitment to try to be active in Reston. And I felt the only way to do that is to learn what you do and to go to various committees. I go and sit, especially in the DRME meetings that meet 3 times a month, and I just sit there and I listen. And I guess I have to say my face is getting pretty well known in there. And then I look at the faces in this room, at you, members of the board, and I look at the advice that you give for being board liaison committee as to the various committees within Reston, and how you try to manage 6,200 acres and 60,000 people. And you can't ever please everyone. But how you do it as volunteers and the amount of time that you put in, my heartfelt gratitude. When I went to the lake house to see the awards for the volunteers, I was blown away. To look at the faces of the children that volunteers, they were so proud of what they do, and the applause given to the corporations that support Reston. I don't think you get enough credit for what you do, how you do it, and the good job that you do, but you certainly get it from me. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Patty.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Holiday cheer.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
If anybody else would like to get up and speak about the same topic, that would be
Right.
great.
We're
We're fully open to that.
Suspend the
You can take,
You can have yours.
You can have 5.
We should want to have 5. 5, 10 minutes. I make
So much
up a
for all
group.
that Robert's
Yeah.
rules I just talked about.
Patty, thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
thank you.
I have
Really appreciate it, thanks.
Meg?
I'm Meg Copenal. I live at 1512 Churchill Place, Hampton Point condominium. I guess I'm confused. This is the first time I've been to a board meeting, even though I've lived in Reston for like 13 years, but this is an issue that I'm very interested in. I thought that this issue was going to be on the agenda, but I guess not. I guess I don't know how it works. But the issue that I'm here on is the utilization of the lake house. And I'm a member of this senior exercise strength training class that is given or has been given over at the lake house for quite a long time now on Mondays and Wednesdays from 11 to 12. And it benefits a lot of people. Anyway, and we were told that it would be moved somewhere else after January 1st. In other words, we've had our last class for 2017, and they've suggested, I get Reston Association has suggested a new place, which I believe is this room right here. The leaders of the class, the instructors, say that, you know, if we had railings, that would be acceptable to them. But the lake house has, I guess they call it handicapped railings, you know, when you can hang on to them when you're doing your exercises. It's sort of like they have at ballet class 2. Anyway, I'm here for more than just the exercise class. I'm surprised that there aren't more classes that have been given at the lake house, but I guess, and I am unaware of all the discussion that took place about the lake house, but I didn't realize it was going to be reserved for rentals and that resting groups were not going to be able to buy it. And I didn't know whether that was well known to people in Reston before the purchase took place. And I'm not that familiar with it, but I believe that the purchase just took place last year. Also, I didn't know what that meant when it says Comstock supported. So was it always intended to be a rental facility, and the exercise class was just put there for a while until such time as the rental program started? And it's not just the exercise class. It's a beautiful facility for a lot of things, but I didn't realize that Reston residents were going to have to pay if they wanted to have a class there. And in fact, they don't really want to have a class. I realize that they want to have it as a you all want to have it as a rental facility. So basically, that's the issue, is the use of the lake house. And we have, I thought, I don't know if Dan is here tonight. I don't see him, but he was, okay, good. And he has probably more to say about this. You know, there's been a number of pieces of correspondence that have gone back and forth on this. So that's basically it. I just wanted to bring it up because it sort of was a surprise to us that, you know, the exercise class and other classes were not going to be held there after January 1st. So I see I'm out of time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There we go.
I don't recognize this name. Tammy.
Tammy Vitrine, 2503 Foxcroft Way, and I don't recognize that name either. I want to say to you, thank you so much for hosting CPR on Monday evening. Your generosity and hospitality was very much appreciated, as well as Sherry, you getting up impromptu and giving a phenomenal welcome and introduction. You know, honestly, I didn't know that my friend here was going to say the same thing I want to say, which is Thanksgiving is just over, but you all have changed the character. This particular board has changed the character of RA. I spend a great deal of time talking to a lot of people around the community and trying to explain land use matters. It's also an historical first in my 40 years of living here, when I've been paying attention, which is at least the last 10 years, that an RA board has devoted itself to being totally transparent and welcoming of members. You have no clue how much that is appreciated, and we're coming up to an election with 4 seats. I hope that people who win those seats follow your pattern and are as determined to make RA as wonderful and effective and sensible as it can be. Regarding what this lady just talked about, RA cannot be all things to all people. We have Reston Community Center, small tax district, number 5. We pay 4.7 cents in assessments on our real estate to fund that. That is where exercise classes and other services like that belong. An HOA cannot be all things to all people. What you can be is open, honest, transparent, and wise. The time that you give is astonishing, and it is so appreciated. And Sherry, I have to say, your leadership is exemplary. You're welcoming to people before meetings, and you make people feel like they belong here, not that they're intruding. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Would you like to come back and repeat that? That's all I had. Does anybody else in the audience want to speak?
Madam President,
Sir?
I would like to make a comment as a member, not as a board member.
Okay.
Wow.
Need your address.
John Goldman, 12229 Corn Way, that's Corn with a Q-U, with the 4, P-H-O-U-R, fat, P-H-A-T, cats, Q-U-A-T-S. Missed that, didn't you?
That was pretty close.
As a member of the community and former member of the Multimodal Transportation Advisory Committee, I want to give you a little teaser and steal a little thunder. That particular advisory committee has worked diligently and has obtained a renewal of our bronze categorization for a bicycle-friendly community. Now, I know we have members who think those dastardly bicycles should stay off of the road everything else. However, we as an association brag about our sustainability and our environmental consciousness. Bicycling and pedestrian is part of that. So my challenge to you is when they come to you for recognition from you for attaining that, and then when they come to you at a following meeting to give you a report out of their accomplishments and what is necessary for this association to commit to attain the next level of bicycle-friendly community, I strongly encourage you to take that very seriously into mind and include it in your budget discussions for next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, John?
Oh, and so, as a reprise, I want to call out some people who are very instrumental. Dan Cole, Rick Landers, Kelly Westenhoff, Emily McGrath, Craig Clark. So, these guys did great.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you to that team for getting that done for us as a community.
Madam President,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to respond or address the board on what Meg Copernol brought up. Is that appropriate?
No objection.
Objections?
Okay. So and I should say that since we're trying to be transparent, Meg helped on my campaign, but that's not why I'm talking about this. I, like Meg, am concerned about the principle involved in how we use our facilities. And I think Lake House was a complicated issue for many reasons. One is the majority of the board, the solid majority of the board, had grave misgivings by saying that child care, or specifically after-school care, was part of our core mission. And there was, if not unanimous, general agreement on that. There was a second principle involved, which is that we should make sure that we use our facilities in a way that could try to pay for themselves as much as possible. Not all programs pay for themselves, but it should be at least proportionate to those taking part of it. So if there are great costs involved, it should support a larger group of our members. But I do want to reflect together on one of our bylaw provisions, which is Article 2, and it's Article 2 policies. And the very first policy cited says this: foster the fullest usage of the lands and facilities managed by it, the association, and serve the leisure time needs of the association residents by establishing and seeking actively to have established leisure time programs in the association facilities and lands. So that's the first policy obligation that is stated in our bylaws. So it's a balancing act, and I would hate to say that. And another complication is we were trying to make sure that we got some money back on Lake House because we had invested more in it than we had anticipated. And so forth. And there are maintenance costs, and we want to recover that. But I think we as a board and we as an association need to do what we can. And I hear my friend Tammy say, well, there's the county-run facility. But I think our bylaws clearly say the reason we have many facilities, and I think Lake House would be one of them, is to have leisure time activities for our members. So what I would like to do with the board's permission is to refer this to our CEO to see if there is a reasonable accommodation we can make somewhere else, perhaps in one of these rooms. And when I received the communication a week or so ago from Meg, I did ask, what would be the cost impact or the rental income impact of having something here, and I realize we don't have bars, but we have something that you can lean on over there, maybe, I don't know. But if we can make accommodations for group, not just for the seniors exercise group, but for groups like that, because I think that's the prime reason we have facilities. So that's my statement, that's my request. I would like to refer it to the CEO to see whether we can accommodate this program without serious income loss, and my inquiries to Kate and to the staff that does the rental indicates that there are a couple times a week when there would be absolutely no rental conflict with this room here. So that's my request, to refer it to the CEO for evaluation to see if we can accommodate it.
Okay. John.
Can I ask a question? I know you don't want crosstalk, but I thought I got the impression that those particular classes had been moved. Already an accommodation was made, even though it may not be perceived as good accommodation.
I know it's been discussed. I don't know that it's been
Okay.
effected, John.
Okay. Kate, did you?
Do you want to say something? Go ahead.
Staff can certainly work on that, and I know they were interested in looking at, an alternate location if that is acceptable to the board, and understand the request. Already made a notation here about the need for a bar, almost like a dance bar, in order to accommodate that. So if there's no objection for the board and we're able to accommodate it at this facility, may we pursue that, I think is the question.
I think your point is to look at it holistically and determine the best outcome.
Right. Right.
And or do we need to be looking at, the RCC provides the same kind of, if it's already provided, just because it says we have to do leisure activity doesn't mean it has to be that leisure activity if it's already available somewhere else within the community that we're also paying
But
for.
at least I would like to refer it to staff to try to
Sure.
to make sure that we're doing what we can to respond to the leisure time activities of our seniors. They need a handicap accessible place.
Okay.
So it needs to be more than just this. It
You
needs
guys
to
are
be the-
blowing all the rules I just talked about this morning.
I appreciate that. Needs to accommodate all the activities that are impacted at Lake House. So it's looked at holistically. So I support.
The staff.
Can I make just one quick comment? I'll bring it back to the same financial and budgetary things. So as long as, before something gets launched, I'd really like to see, if it has any impact from a rental perspective, from other activities perspective, so that the budget doesn't get blown.
Absolutely.
So I'd certainly like to get visibility into that before something is approved.
So with that objection, we're going to ask staff to look at the possibility of this. Is that what?
And I know that there are a few questions that we have in your next item,
Okay.
and I want to, in relation to this, it goes hand in hand.
Okay.
Is it just for the strengthening program, or is it across the board? I understand John's notation on holistically from the Lake House programming, but I want to make sure that we're clear on what you would like us to bring back to the board before we enter in to anything. Again, that's a larger question in your next discussion.
So let's hold on this discussion until we answer the questions that are in the next discussion. And if we have to come back to this, we can.
Good. This is a specific program, but yes, we should address that.
Okay, so we had one more member comment. Jim? Is it Surratt or Surratt?
Oh, I thought we were done with
I appreciate you letting me talk. My name is Jim Surratt. I live at 11487 Waterview Cluster. I'm here to talk about a room space for mind body boot camp that I've been in for a while. We need a space since it looks like the lake house is going to be used for other purposes. we only meet twice a week for 1 hour each day. It's not a lot, but anyway. Anyway, so we need a space so that our exercise group can continue our rehab exercise program, which helps us maintain mobility. This exercise program is unique for us in that the instructors give a lot of attention for individual needs. For myself, this program far exceeds benefit results I've received from other programs. It's primarily because of that individual attention that the instructors give within the class time. I participated in the Mind Body Boot Camp program for about 1 year, and as a result, I enjoy much better health and better mobility. Other members in the group have expressed similar results to me as well. For our successful improvement to continue, we need our present space at the Lake House or a similar one, possibly here in the RA building, to meet in twice a week for 1 hour on each day. Thank you for your assistance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody want copies of my car?
Yeah.
Okay, so that'll close member comments. So we'll move on to agenda item F, which David will lead, so I guess
I'm down as the presenter, and I think because I was the one at the November 16th meeting that asked that this be placed on the agenda. If you go back to November 16th, you'll recall that that's when we approved the operating budget, but there were concerns raised that I think if I can accurately summarize it, since I was not at the September board meeting, concerns were raised that the instruction that was given to staff at that meeting in September was that the Lake House after-school care program, if I can paraphrase, we're not in the daycare business. And the question came up at the November 16th meeting as to whether or not this is just a rebranding of that program at a different location with a different name. And I was concerned that ultimately it was removed, it was eliminated, the two items were eliminated from the budget. The budget was passed excluding implementation of the Fit Kids enrichment programs under camp school year programming. And I was concerned that there might have been a misimpression. The camps, as I read a flyer that was distributed that had been produced by RA, it didn't seem to me to qualify as after-school care because it was only 2 days a week. After-school care to me would imply that it would be 5 days a week. Now, I will concede that there was an effort made on those 2 days to render it similar to after-school care because transportation would be provided from the school to the camp. So that's where we are. So that's the one issue as to whether the specific RA Fit Kids enrichment clubs should be included in the budget. And then the broader issue that has been raised in your summary, agenda item summary, which is, how much should staff be doing? Should they be asking the board before they start programs? If a program has to be changed for one reason or another, should staff have to come back to the board? So that's one of the other items for discussion. And that's about all I have to say about it, and would hope that we can get opinions from the board members.
So I'm playing Robert's rules right now. Do we need a motion and second before we even start discussion?
So the motion would be?
So the
Well, to put it on the table, Madam President, I would move that the board approve implementation of the Fit Kids enrichment programs under camp school year programming in the 2018 operating budget.
And I'll second that.
Okay.
So we can have discussion.
Yep.
Indeed, yeah.
So who would like to first?
Since I set off the firestorm, how about I start?
Victoria.
So just to be clear, I asked the question because the way that it was termed in the budget, as I looked through the budget, it said RA Fit Kids. RA Fit Kids was the name of the after-school care program. That's why I raised it as an issue. I think this goes back to some of the member comments. We have these facilities, we should be using the facilities for the membership. Part of the issue I had with after-school care was, number one, an HOA shouldn't be in after-school care. Number two, it was monopolizing the use of that one facility that cost us a pretty penny. So we do need to balance the needs of the promises of previous boards that the lake house would pay for itself, which is clearly not, and the bylaws, which clearly state that the facilities are for the members and the members' enjoyment. So in whatever decision we make, we need to balance that. And to be clear, I asked the question because it was the same name as the after-school program, which to a board member that was here that night, we said we are not in the business of after-school care. But a larger discussion of how we use the facilities, I think Julie's been asking a lot of questions about that and trying to get to where's there overlap in other organizations within the community, and how can we better utilize the facilities for the benefit of the membership without any one group monopolizing it, really.
So are you done with your first bite at the apple?
That is my bite.
Okay. Second bite. I mean, you get a second bite later. Julie, you were shaking your head like your turn.
Do you want to
We don't
say?
have to go in
Okay.
order.
I was glad that John pointed out what our bylaws do say. My feeling on goes back to why did we buy the lake house? Why did the membership vote to buy the lake house? And part of that was to provide programming for our members, additional programming. And it has saddened me since we purchased that property that we have not been able to use it to our members' benefit to the extent. I certainly understand and agree we're not in the daycare business. But I'm also not seeing where we're offering programs for our members to use it. I understood why we said, hey, let's focus on rentals. But as I have understood it, when we have had programs, or if we were to have ad hoc programming, similar to what we do at the Walker House or wherever, and things that do not conflict already with Reston Community Center, which in the board package you'll see some comparison of that, it seems to me that we've been able to make accommodations. And I'm fearful that right now we're veering off to only rentals and not being able to take care of members with things that they might wish to do and how we might use that facility. So my thought had been that we asked our staff to pursue and to find revenue for that property. If there's not a revenue opportunity, I think we ought to be able to use it for members, accommodation of members and their needs. I do not know whether or not this particular mind-body exercise thing is mirrored in the RCC program guide. It came to my house the day after we had the discussion, and I did look to see if I could find something that was comparable, but and I know in the past that we've looked at that to see what conflicts there might be. I don't know if anybody else has tried to use some of the RCC programs, but they're not always available. Sometimes they're full. And they certainly aren't at times that I can use them. So I'm concerned that we not go too far one way versus another. And that's it.
Okay. Anyone else? Mike?
I made a comment when this was raised at the board meeting that we need to provide general guidance to staff on how to use these facilities. You know, without reading the policy, my interpretation of what the rules might be, we're very close to what the policy in fact is. the facilities, the assets we have here in the community are for member benefit. I did raise concern about describing the opportunity at the lake house as a corporate rental. I said, look, we're about serving our members. Absolutely, we should be aware of what other programming is available from other providers, where it be Lifetime Fitness or the Y or RCC or otherwise, so that we're not directly competing with them unless we have a reason to do it, generate additional revenues or otherwise. We need to provide, and perhaps staff could do this for us, what are some general principles that we as a board could agree to that would allow that facility to be used to its fullest extent possible. I clearly voted for the Tetra property in part because I knew that it would bring in revenue. It didn't bring in the revenue that
Counted the cost at the time.
that we had anticipated. As I said when we talked about this at the last board meeting, we can't tie the hands of our staff too tightly. We can give them general principles. We can ensure by them reporting back that those principles are being applied, but let's give them as much flexibility as possible to ensure that facility is being used to its greatest extent. You know, one thing certainly, expanding the hours. When we first purchased it, there was a commitment to limit the hours of its use. Well, that limits opportunities. So again, my clear point is, what are the principles that allow that to be used to the extent possible and offered revenue generating options?
Okay, John?
Madam President, I just want to note two things that struck me as I, after last meeting, tried to sort this out. I think two of the things that really muddied our conversation last time were, first of all, calling it the same name as the program, which was what we clearly voted against. So, you know, the after-school care had the same name, and I think that muddied the water. The other thing that muddied the waters, and I don't think it was deliberate, is just that it was not until the November meeting, to the best of my reading of the history of our documents, that the elements of this program were called out, the various programs. We had seen aggregate numbers for camps, year-round camps, in previous iterations of the budget development, but we hadn't seen these things. And, you know, at the end, perhaps you roll out more details, but I think not having seen those details earlier also muddied the waters of our last discussion at the last meeting.
Okay.
Who wants to, Eric, you or me?
John.
Okay, go ahead.
John.
Okay, there's only so many times I can get away with saying, I'm gonna say this is the new guy, okay? So,
You're an old guy now.
that was supposed to be, it was supposed to be funny, yeah, okay, all right, so I blew that one.
You can try
You
again.
do have gray hair.
It's blonde. It's blonde.
Extremely blonde.
It depends on the sunglasses you have on.
Focus.
Oh, I'm focused. Okay, so I appreciate Director Mooney pointing out the article saying that leisure time is one of our goals, and I certainly can agree with that. However, I would submit that this board has a higher order of responsibility than that they are the fiduciaries for the association. And I bet if we gave staff free rein, they are clever and competent enough that they could fill that particular facility from sunrise to sunset, and it would still be a Titanic-sized hole below the waterline in our budget. Okay. What I saw this board do, on recommendation from staff, as I recall, they made a decision on how to elevate the highest order use of that facility to minimize the budget impact, okay? That doesn't mean we're against leisure time and other activities for the members. Our challenge is to figure out how to maintain the best fiscal use of that facility and accommodate what we can in other facilities. And you've heard me say this before, if the bus is full, if all our facilities are full and we can't fit it in correctly, it's unfortunate and it wouldn't make me happy, but sometimes that's the fact. I think the financial responsibility overrides everything. This board is trying to make up for a hole in the budget. I will tell you, my opinion is you jumped through hoops a couple years ago for a couple years to try to minimize the visibility and the impact of it, but we're still living with it. So I see this as a fiscal decision. I also, to Director Sanya's point of giving the staff as much flexibility, I'm fine with giving them flexibility, but they need to come back to us when there's a financial impact. Right. You know, we have to the best of my understanding, and you can correct me. We haven't. I'm not aware that we have set spend limits per various roles within the staff that they have the ability to spend within. Maybe I think CO has that. But you know, at lower levels of the staff, I don't know that exists. And if it doesn't, and if we think it's a good idea, that's a subject for another time. But free reign to spend the members' money without this board approving it, I can't go there. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric?
So I take on the point of, and I embrace the point that our facilities are for our membership. And in none of my past comments on my position in this, that I want to exclude member organizations or member groups from accessing and for a nominal fee renting that facility and having it available to them. That's what it's for. My philosophic approach to a homeowners association, and particularly to ours, is that we should not enter a market that does not need our entry. I feel that after-school programs, be they 1-day or 5-day, is a well-served market in Reston. Fairfax County offers in-home daycares, which allow stay-at-home mothers and fathers to watch several children at once. The schools have pre and post-school daycare programs. There are a number of private facilities, from the Y to Reston Children's Center after-school programs to Robert E. Simon Children's Center, Reston Children's Center, Lank, that offer this area. It's a well-served market, and I do not want to establish a trend where the Reston Association moves in and elbows aside Reston members who are already making a living doing this. And there are many Reston members who are already making a living providing enriching programs for our children after school. I am not opposed to groups using the lake house. I don't view it as a conference center. I am opposed to any Reston facility fostering an after-school program that we have now created, partly to try to fill a fiscal hole in the beginning as a stopgap. But it was a market we should never have gotten into. It was a market that we did not need to play in. It is well served. And I do not want us to establish any precedent where we come in and try to muscle our way into that market.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, okay, good, thank you. So first of all, I sent an email during the weekend looking for more information in order to do further analysis, because to me, it still looks like after school. Instead of 2:30, it's 3:30, and goes till 6:30. You still have buses. I asked for clarity in terms of, what was the description, what were the activities previously done in Lake House. This is what is being done now. I haven't got that information as yet. I got an email late in the evening, which I haven't had a chance to look at. So first of all, from an informational perspective, I don't have enough to act on this at this stage. But I still think, my personal view is, I agree with, what I've heard so far from many of the directors. There is a competitive market for this in Reston, everywhere. You go up and down Reston Parkway, you see kinder care, it's not just RCC, you see so many facilities that offer, whether it's a STEM program or other kinds of right from kindergarten to, I've looked at this from a business perspective even before RA. So there is a lot of, opportunity for people to go to, to different places. We should not be in the business of doing all those kinds of things. We cannot be, to borrow one of the member comments, what Tammy said, we can't be all things to all people. So I still look at this as an after-school program. The kids finish school at 3 o'clock and they're going to be there at 3:30. You're going to go pick up. There are budget issues that I need to look at. Other issues that I want this board to know as well is that the Parks and Recs department in the last 3 years, the revenue shortfall against what was projected was 600,000. And here you look at this. It's first of all, the spreadsheet that I got, no links, no backup, except for a list of hard-coded numbers. That's not the way you do an analysis. So that's not sufficient from my perspective to look at it. It's barely going to eke out 4,000, so it looks like, you're going to make $4,000. But that's not the point. You have to look at the backup. You have to see what's really going on there. And given that, I've seen the Parks and revenue shortfall in the last 3 years, I have to have a great deal of confidence, even if we, think about moving forward on this. But I really think that this is still after-school care, unless I see more information that really tells me otherwise. Thank you.
The action that this board is considering at this point is what?
The motion.
Right.
And the motion is
To include this as part of the budget?
Yeah.
to include this program.
Yes.
This program is part of the
Yes.
budget.
The
That's right.
January program?
Want to make sure that we're
The enrichment,
all
the fit
focused
kids.
Enrichment
on-
clubs.
The
Yeah.
enrichment clubs. Okay, so everybody, David, you already said did you want to?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Now everybody can have a second bite at our enrichment kids apple.
I'll respond to any comments, to my comments if there is.
Want to make clarify. So in my packet, I have a spreadsheet that says enrichment clubs budget details 2018. Is that what we are looking at?
Yep.
Saying we are fine with those type of clubs, whether or not they pay for themselves or not. So I don't necessarily believe that everything we do has to pay for itself. Pools certainly don't pay for themselves, and we have pools. That is the clubs that we're looking at, that full group of ones that run from January through December, including holiday crafts, sports fundamentals, gardening, spring into summer, fitness, Lego. I just want to make sure that I know what I'm voting on. Is that a yes?
It's what was presented as enrichment clubs. That's all I have. But, okay, so you get one more bite.
I know I gotta use this bite, so I'm confused now. I thought when we pulled it out of the budget to approve the budget, it was just this enrichment club we pulled out. Did we
The
pull out?
January
We'll let Justice Club.
The January,
And
February
Julie,
ones.
what you're asking is all of the enrichment clubs. I don't think we're talking
Everything
about
on the
all of
list, no. I believe
That's why
it's
I'm
just the
asking.
drama, consumer science, and mad scientist.
Okay.
Correct, Laura? Is-
Sure.
Thank you.
So I'm happy to answer any questions. Excuse my voice, it's starting to go. So the information that's in your packet that has the $4,000 in there as revenue, if you look at some of the other information that was emailed out, we had said that this is a laundry list of the plan for the year. It doesn't mean that all of these programs are actually going to come to fruition. So, for example, in our last enrichment club plan, we had a holiday craft club, we had sign language, we had fishing, and we didn't have the registrants for a holiday craft club, so that didn't happen. Sign language and fishing did. So this was a plan for the year. And when you all approved, when you gave us guidance and direction to go with option 4 for Lake House with the rentals, the camps, and the ad hoc programs, what we did is we removed all of the other programs because they weren't ad hoc. So that's ad hoc we viewed as one-time events. For example, the Cookies with Santa, that's a one-time, one-shot deal. But anything that was a series, that was, okay, let's take this, let's move this away. So after school was gone, we had clubs. So those clubs were considered a series, as well as the fitness class offerings, health and wellness. We had mindfulness, yoga, tai chi, and then the this fitness program that that was brought up this evening. So those programs needed to find a new home. And that's what we were in the process of doing. So Tai Chi and mindfulness had been at Brown's Chapel before. We'd had some classes there that worked. When we went to meet with the fitness instructor for the senior fitness class, the strength training, it wasn't feasible at that location, but this location was. So from September, the end of September until now, staff has been working to try to find a location for those. And these are all pay-to-play programs. So for, I do want to address the budget impact. If we don't have enough enrollees in a program, we don't offer it. And for example, with the fitness class, what we had done at Lake House when they were there, if there was a rental, if member services team, we had an opportunity, we would move that class. So we were successful in doing that and making those shifts, just as we do with our tennis program. If the facility goes down, we need to make arrangements to move a class to a different location. So those are the kinds of logistics that we do already. But from September, that decision made, we needed to find, and we hadn't finalized where to put those programs. And what you have before you here is just the plan that staff had put together for ideas for what would occur in 2018. I hope that helps give a little bit. Yes, sir.
As to the motion says approve the implementation of the Fit Kids enrichment programs under Camp School Year programming. What specifically of this whole laundry list is it that, if the motion passes, will be included in the budget?
I would think about it as, do we offer clubs, if clubs are to be offered. So these clubs are 2 days a week. We typically have 2 offerings. So when we're looking at a facility such as Brown's Chapel, we have availability at that location from 4:30 to 6, so it's an hour and a half for the program. And we have the opportunity to fill Monday through Thursday. Friday, we have a rental in there. It's a long-term rental for a church, so that's not possible. So you have parents that may sign up for drama, or they may sign up for consumer science if we're looking at the January option there. But not everybody's going to sign up for each. You have different interests that we saw.
And then in February is the Mad Scientist Club, correct?
Correct. So it was, if you going down the list, it's a reoccurring, every month 1 to 2 offerings for that type of program. And the choice is yours if that's something that you would like to offer. Mike.
So just in terms of history, we've offered these programs in the past, and this is a continuation of those programs. Roughly how many kids are involved?
I'm going to look at Dan. I
Just
think he told me
rough,
15.
On the average, 10 to 15 for each type of class. Lego, for example, in past spring or last fall was 20. So it just depends on the topic.
And total number of kids over the year? Roughly?
Probably around 100 to 120 total.
Total for the whole program?
Yes. As far as, again, this is a year in its making, so yes, as far as
So in your first year?
The club part of this, yes, it's about 120 kids.
120 kids for everything?
All of them put together. Okay.
All of them put together.
Yeah.
So it's relatively small. But this has been going on for 5 years, 10 years?
Just, it began in the fall of 2016.
And where did you do it?
Relatively new.
We did it at Lake House.
Okay, that's my point. So if I were to string all of these together, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you have the same schedule. Each of the days they are different programs. This is why I'm asking for the schedule, the description of activities. If you did the same thing and the same people enroll, instead of them enrolling for a whole month, they can sign up for each of these programs individually, and you basically end up at the same place.
Is that what you found?
We haven't
No,
found.
that's what I'm trying to find out, and that's what I suspect.
It's a good question, and I appreciate the question in light of the confusion with the fee schedule. And what we've found from the fishing club to the gardening club that were held on different days, we did not have the same enrollees enrolling in the same, the same season, if you will. So we would have, one family sign up for fishing, they weren't also doing drama, or they weren't also doing garden or guitar.
Thank you.
If that helps.
But my point really is, if we did the same thing in Lake House, and we are doing the same thing in Brown's Chapel, slightly altered hours, right? And we've broken them up, given the people the flexibility, instead of giving, making a monthly payment, you can do for 2 days. You're giving them, this is like, a la carte cable menu. So you're giving them an a la carte menu as opposed to a bundled price of a monthly subscription, right? Still the same thing. You're still picking up people.
But
You're still dropping them. Please, let me finish, okay? But you're still doing the same thing. So I have to see that, We might end up with the same people enrolling across the board because you've just broken them up and, tried to figure out a way to get the same thing done, right? I'm still not comfortable if that it's something different.
Can I ask one more question from
Sure,
Laura?
and then I'd like to.
Laura, the Lake House program that was talked about in September, was that 4 days a week or 5 days a week?
The after-school program
Yes.
was 5 days a week, and the
Thank you.
clubs were held at various locations. So the base would be at Lake House, but the gardening, they took the kids to a garden plot for that hour. For the fishing, they took them to various lakes, different lakes to execute the club. The Lake House was sort of the base. The
But
home
as
base.
part of the after-school program.
No, as a club, a standalone club. So, and a majority of those participants were not Lake House participants that were enrolled in the after-school club. They were external they signed up separately.
It was a separate
Members of-
after-school program. So it was a separate after-school program. We had two.
separate activities.
So we had two after-school programs. We had one at Lake House and one that started at Lake House but went to other locations.
Lake House was the home base for
Right.
that
Yeah,
program.
okay, thank you.
Do you have another question? Because I want to just move this on.
Yeah, I have one more. So, what I call the daycare, every day, Monday through Friday, you had a group that signed up for that.
Correct.
But you had, people could sign up their kids for these clubs, which happen to be called enrichment clubs, kind of more ad hoc, in the sense that it's one time to this, I pay for this, I decide I want to go to this, whatever. And I gather that you weren't finding that people did as Sridhar said somebody might do, which was use both and string care that way.
A majority, you can name.
I'd say 90% of the enrollees in the clubs were not part of the Fit Kids After School program. These were either residents of Reston or not even residents of Reston going, because we did advertise to local schools, so mom and dad or grandparents brought them to the various clubs, depending on the day of the week.
And they remind me somewhat of some of the programs that we've done at Walker House as well.
Okay.
Can we call a vote?
Yeah, I moved to call the question.
So just want to read the motion. David made a motion, Mike seconded it. For the board to approve implementation of Fit Kids enrichment programs under camp school year programming in the 2018 operating budget. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's 3. All those opposed?
I'd like to make the opposed may have already carried the day.
They did.
Okay.
So
I wanted to do a
abstain?
substitute motion, but
No, he raised his hand, he opposed.
You can do a separate motion.
Yeah, you can do it separately.
Yeah.
You can do a motion
Not with
now.
this one.
I'd like to make a motion that, I'd like to make a motion that we consider this again when we have more information, including the kind of information that Sridhar was asking. So I would like to do this for the beginning of the year. Let me tell you why.
Can I second real quick?
Huh?
Can I second that real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's why. I heard 3 of our colleagues say the same thing, that it's a balancing issue. It's a balancing issue between using our facilities for programs for our members and financial sustainability of the organization and indeed of the programs themselves, but of the organization. And I didn't hear anyone dispute that, so others probably agree it's a balancing issue. That was that was something. So the question is, can we balance that? And that depends on the location, duration of the programs, what they cost, and what they might have. And Sridhar said he can't make a judgment on that yet. So that's why I would make a motion to consider it when we have sat down with staff and Sridhar and those of us who are interested in this and see how do we balance financial sustainability and service to our members. I think we can't avoid the balancing requirement.
I would agree with that completely. And the reason I voted for the motion is we've got a bird in our hand. We don't know what's in the bush, but at least this is generating some net. And so I think the challenge for others is there a better opportunity? And I was concerned, and I raised this before, about promoting this as only corporate rentals. Corporate rentals are okay, but they may or may not necessarily serve our members.
Just point of clarification, we're not talking about the lake house.
No, I'm talking about programming generally.
Okay.
But Lake House is part of that. It's not easy to generate new revenue through programs for our assets. And so I celebrate creative ideas to do that. And as I said, this board should discuss principles that would guide staff in coming forward with proposals. And what I see here, and the reason I voted for the motion, is a proposal. It's relatively new, but it is generating revenue. There's certainly other considerations. Is it truly competing, as Eric said, against what homes are already doing? And I wouldn't want us to do that. And I think we can provide that kind of clarity. But what we need to provide to the staff is what is it that we as a board want them to focus their attention on? I hate to go by that facility or any of our facilities and see them not being used. And often we do. And so it begs the question, given the cost of maintaining them, should we even keep them? Because there's a cost. At any rate, we spent too much time on this issue.
Well, there is a motion on the
I
table.
second.
Any other comments on that motion? Victoria?
I think you're right, we discussed that it's balancing, and I think we need to look at the potential offerings, because there are some offerings on this list that we've been provided that are fantastic, because they enhance the assets that Reston has that nobody else has. The gardening program, the fishing program. Nobody else is going to be able to offer those programs. But then I look at some of the others and I think, well, fitness, what is that? And then hearing about yoga, well, there's a lot of yoga studios. There's a lot of places to go for yoga. So I think it goes back to what I had mentioned previously that Julie had been asking hard questions about, is where is there overlap in our programming, and where can we utilize the resources that we have that nobody else has benefit of to the benefit of our community. And the lakes are a great thing that you've raised previously. The lakes and the garden plots are really wonderful places to start.
Okay, we want to get off this topic, so let's just make these real quick.
So I'm inclined to support Mr. Mooney's motion. However, I would say I'm not convinced we know all of our costs, so we need to encourage staff.
Absolutely.
I'll use a naive example, cost recovery on the buses. I bet you have that somewhere in your hip pocket. And if you don't, you should, okay? Because we need to know that's part, if we're doing an enrichment camp and we're picking kids up, that's part of our cost, and we need to understand that.
Sure.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I would like to be part of that group. It seems to me it's kind of like what we did with the legal. We had a legal one, we had a this, we had that. So
Would need to
that
get, I'm sorry?
analysis of what programs we have, the overlap, and work with the staff to be able to come back.
Any other comments?
No, I think she's probably talking about people doing the analysis. So, I mean, from my perspective, lots of information is needed, real competitive analysis, where the market is, who else is doing what, whether it is RCC. The type of analysis that I do is, I have not seen that. I really need to, I have to dig into it deep. This actually goes into the next topic as well. Because until at least from my perspective, I need to have the comfort that the staff is following a diligent process in terms of costs, revenues, and how these things are planned, how these things are implemented. I think we should, and doing a proper competitive analysis, to going back to, things that, where we are, where is it that RA can serve best? Should we be in affordable housing just because, that's a requirement in Reston? We are a homeowners association. What should we be focusing on? Because that's providing subsidized affordable housing is a great idea too, right? So I think we need to be very careful about, yes, the bylaws give us a lot of breadth, flexibility in terms of what we can focus on, but we really can't be all things to all people. So I'll be happy to, I'm already doing a full facilities analysis precisely for the question that, the types of questions that we get. Pools don't make money, so why are we spending money on that, right? So those are things that we should be asking ourselves, and hopefully we'll address all of them in the beginning of the year as part of the full analysis.
So
Okay.
I just
Sorry,
want
I'm
to
done.
speak on this motion. I think that, in my opinion, the board has made a decision on David's previous motion that we will not be moving forward with enrichments for the 2018 budget. That decision has now been made. To now go back and say, well, let's relook at that decision in a few months doesn't make any sense to me. We've made the decision. Maybe we revisit this during the 2019 budget. And I'm saying that because come the first of the year, we have committed to looking at all facilities, pools, ballparks, tennis courts. We have a lot of work to do. And if we make a decision and then we keep wanting to look at the decision again, we're never going to get to what I will call higher level conversations that I think this board is charged to do. So, John, as much as I would love to do it, we just don't have time to do that kind of thing. So I would be voting against that motion. I think we're at a call for a vote.
Yep.
All those in favor, can you read your motion?
My motion is that we undertake an analysis of the specific programs that were voted down in the new year after having done a financial analysis, an adequate financial analysis, and also a needs analysis. Are these needs able to be met elsewhere? But that balances the commitment to provide for the leisure activities of our members, but also...
John, just the motion. What's
No, that is...
the whole thing?
Well...
Okay.
So it's the balancing, to re-examine these programs.
Just these
Right.
ones that were going to be in January
Point of clarification.
versus overall.
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Sure.
That we undertake this similarly to the facilities usage, that the bigger conversation that we're having, and that it not just be for these discrete programs, but programs as a whole. And it's
Accept the
part
friendly
of,
amendment.
as part of
Right.
kind of what we're doing next year.
That was my point.
I accept the friendly amendment.
If it's done in the context of the review that we're already doing, and then you can compare, is this really important or is it less important? Makes sense.
Ready for a vote? All those in favor of...
Is it for 2019? We do it in 2018 for
No, he wants to do
2019?
My understanding is, just to clarify, right, we would add this programmatic review
As
either
part
at the
of-
end of or part of the facilities
Part of
review we're going to do.
Yes.
And
For the
for the
2019.
2019.
That's the friendly amendment, which I accepted.
For
Did you
2019.
catch all those?
So I want to, I did catch it, but it's, so the facilities that you all said you're interested in looking at in the first part of next year were pools, tennis courts, ball fields. Okay, that does not include community buildings, which is.
Well, all of them,
All of them.
all
They will.
facilities.
So
All
for clarity
facilities.
then, what you're interested in doing in advance of the 2019 budget this is just my interpretation, I want to make sure I've got it crystal clear, is that you would like to look at our program offerings, recreational program offerings. I want to qualify that because we have other offerings beside recreation. Recreational program offerings in total on a needs assessment as well as expense before we enter into them. So we're talking about everything that we do. What I'm hearing is everything that we do. Is that a true statement?
That is,
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm
everything
clear.
to an analysis, yes.
2019.
In advance of
Or
2019.
in advance of
we have to provide-
2019.
Okay,
What
because.
we already have
and-
as well, yep.
And that's not right. I just want to understand what the directive is so that we can begin preparations to have that conversation. I'm not sure I would couple it necessarily exactly with the facilities, but I know you've asked the question about programming, Sherry. I know that that's important, but they're two separate things. You've got facilities that you have and programming that's offered, so I understand. And just to, one of the assurances I want to give is we can't spend outside the budget that you've already set for us. So Director Bowman asked that question. You've already given us a directive. You can only spend this much for 2018. So we won't go beyond that. And I've got a clear message that anything new that we need to do, you want to see. That's not already on a list. So hypothetically, if like the fitness program, you're going to want us to come back with information on that before we conduct it in 2018. So it's not only 19, but it's this program that we were looking at relocating. And I know Director Mooney was asking that earlier this evening. Can we look at the feasibility of relocating that program possibly to this facility? Before we did that, we would first need to come back to you to do that. I just want to, this is kind of part of the question that we included in your packet, just for clarity, because we want it, we have no issue if that's the direction the board wants to go. We just want to be clear that you want to look at everything before it happens. And that's all I'm looking for, is clarity on that. It's either we can go with what we've got and we need to make our numbers in 18, or it's no, if beyond what's on the list of things to do, you need to come back. That's what we need to know. For 19, you want a full review of all the programs. Aquatics programming, start to finish, tennis programming, start to finish, any incidental programming, start to finish. That's what I'm asking for clarity on, because it'll set the agenda for the coming year. Staff needs to, we all need to know that, so we know what the expectations are so that we can meet them. So that's what I'm looking for tonight. When I hear the motion, when I understand what the board's looking for, I just need as much clarity as possible so that we operate within the guardrails given.
So I honestly got lost on all the emotions that were being friendlied and this and that. So what you're saying, I thought is a little bit different than what I think this motion was, but I do have an answer for what you just said. But let's get this motion.
I don't think the motion is well formed.
Do you have a friendly amendment to your motion, sir?
I'm trying to write something out.
Should we answer the questions in the packet that we have in here? I think that they are pertinent to what Kate just was
Well, I'd like to put this to bed if we could.
The budget item was not upheld, so it's not there to do anything with. So if they want to do something like that, it's new money, they got to come back.
Yep, I agree. Can I?
Well, I just like, can we have a motion on the table we have to take?
We
So-
have an ill-formed motion on
Do you want to
So do you want to withdraw it? Do you want to withdraw it?
Yeah, I think in the process of making it and amending it and then further defining what we meant by the friendly amendment and the motion, I think it's become misshapen.
So why don't I make a suggestion that if this is important enough that we come back to the next board meeting with a motion that addresses this issue.
I think that's, we don't want to waste more time on this
No,
tonight.
we've got more important stuff.
With your permission, I will work with interested board members and with staff to try to craft a motion for next.
Withdraw your motion?
I withdraw my motion.
Second.
Okay?
Yes. You withdraw that.
Yes,
So-
I agree to withdraw.
Motion's withdrawn.
Motion's
All right.
withdrawn. Okay.
Thank you.
Without
President, I'm
objection,
Without
it'll be-
objection.
come back to a future, to the January meeting, just so
Honestly, I'd like to understand what that means, so I can maybe work with John to understand
Yeah,
what
I think
bringing
we
it
need
back
as a
means.
Good
board,
idea.
put this together and then
'Cause I'm
Yeah,
not-
come forward with it again.
I will assume the responsibility of keeping the board apprised of our attempts to define this, not just at the end, but along the way.
I just want to reinstate that we as a board made a decision
Mhm.
on, we are not doing these programs for 2018.
Yeah. Great.
That decision has been made, Kate.
Yeah.
enrichment clubs, not doing.
Okay.
Correct.
A few other ad hoc programs, like the one you heard this evening.
That was just
Because
the
it-
one.
I thought it was just the January.
It was just,
Just
The fit kids.
No,
It was just the enrichment club.
The senior exercise.
Senior, that, is that what
Senior
you're,
exercise.
is that what
I
you're
wanna-
talking about?
Because
Yeah.
if
Right.
You know, the motion was to approve the implementation of Fitz Kids enrichment programs under the camp school year programming for the 2018
Which-
operating budget.
Which did not include the
It
senior.
did not include the
No,
seniors.
the senior
It was just these
We've not
programs.
touched the senior
So-
program.
Right, so we are continuing to investigate whether within the budget limits we have,
Yeah.
that can be accommodated somewhere else.
At any of our,
Subject-
at any of our facilities, yeah.
Subject to the
Yeah.
same analysis, meaning basically we are,
And that's the important point I
Yes,
want to make.
yes,
So
yep.
staff knows,
Yep.
you know, in January, they're going to be coming back to you saying, here's what we learned about this fitness program
Hmm.
and what we can and can't do with it, and ask permission to hold it. This is
Yes.
a clarifying point
Yes.
that I'm trying to get.
Yes.
yes,
Okay, got it.
And let the minutes show that.
okay.
Good,
All right.
yes.
So should we address this? Do you want to address the?
No,
those
we're-
three points?
On to the next item.
we're good.
Next item.
Next item, please.
No, the
Yes, they
the
have
three
to-
questions, the staff
Hey,
guidance.
did you get the 3 questions that you were looking to get answered? Where are they?
It is, and I just want to be mindful that we, over the course of, as Laura tried to indicate in some of the things that she sent back to you all, during the course of a year, we will come up with a program, and if it doesn't work, then we try to backfill with something else that we've heard is of interest. So we've built the revenue on that, either to meet or not to hold. We do have non-assessment revenue that we have to meet. So if hypothetically we've established a water aerobics program that is not filling up, but we have a revenue goal to meet, I'm just using a hypothetical, then staff is going to get creative to come up with some other type of aquatic program that will generate the revenue that we had planned. And usually we're pretty nimble, and we're able to do that very quickly, because we've got a pretty innovative group who can come up with things that will fill the needs so that we stay within the parameters, whether it's expense or revenue. And if we can't, as you know, if we can't do something, we don't do the expense, and so it balances each other out. What I'm concerned about, and I look to the rec team for this, is what kind of flexibility will there be to be innovative and meet the numbers that we need? I am concerned about revenue now, non-assessment revenue for 2018, and whether we're going to be able to make our numbers if we don't have some level of flexibility. So I think that the staff and I are going to need the answer quickly as to what parameters are we allowed to work within in order to be flexible. Because if it's everything having to come back, I am concerned about our revenue that we need to make. So we've always tried to be, when we do an assessment, a program assessment after something, and we ask people, what else are you interested in? They give us some ideas. If we get bandwidth on some certain things, gee, people keep asking for this, then we create that program and hold it to generate the revenue. So I'm just a little concerned, that's all. And I mean, we're going to have to answer that question quickly, or else I'm not sure we're going to make the numbers.
So just general, I don't want this to drag out. So I would just say to that is, any program, nobody wants to stifle innovation and creativity. That's what these guys do, and they do a good job at that. What I would say is, when you have an innovative idea, a business case typically will be built around that. So what is the needs assessment? What will this cost us? Working with the finance, like Robert, would be part of those discussions. So you have your marketing team would come in. How are we going to market this? So you'd have a business case. So you'd have that is what I think could come to the board to say, yep, that sounds sound to me. If you come to the board and say we have 5 people interested, well, hopefully you wouldn't even bring that to the board. But maybe a little bit, so I think we should try this. I think we should try as you come up with ideas and you build your business case around it, to include the marketing materials you have to use, any vehicles you'd have to use, what staffing you'd have to use, what supplies you'd have to use, what you're going to charge for it. Then you bring that to the board, and I think let's give that a go for some programs. I just don't want to make this too long.
One quick comment
We're
on
a half
this.
hour behind already.
Okay,
Go.
can I make a quick comment? We talk about capital projects beginning of the year. We talk about some of the facilities changes. We don't talk about programming. In a typical business, you talk about what programs you're going to do, marketing, sales, what are your targets, right? We never had that breakup presentation. We just had some slides that said parks and revenues, so much money, revenue by way of revenues and costs. I think we are going to have to implement this so that as part of the budget, we actually have a program-related presentation. Then any modifications you have, it's always good to come back and say that, this is not working. So right in the beginning of the year, you are approving the programs. And at that point, you've gone through the competitive analysis, you've gone through all the questions, just like we are doing for capital projects, right? I think that's good practice, and for next year, let's do that as part of this, for the next year's budget. But again, for your guidance, I would submit that we do this for any changes that you have for this year, for the year coming up, 2018. Okay. But I'd love to hear the 2018, the 10% non-assessment revenue plan. Maybe that's something that, whether it's a board or not, I would love to at least to sit down with the staff at some point, and others can join.
Perhaps
We
our
don't have to block
staff
it.
board working group can work on that.
Yes, on that, exactly.
In the
And
next
it doesn't
month.
have to be in a board meeting, but it can be 2 hours of,
Okay, let's get the mechanics down later.
Okay, all right, good.
Let's move on to item G. Mr. Garrett,
Eric, come on down.
33 minutes behind. We all turn into pumpkins at 10. At least I
Could
do.
take 5.
Thank you.
Hero.
I'm waiting for Mike to, so I'm here to give you guys a quick overview of the year for capital projects for 2017, a brief look ahead and discuss a preview of the carry forwards that we expect to see for projects moving into next year, as well as a request for approval. The next item will be request for approval to approve the first quarter list of capital projects. So I'll jump in the interest of time. So a quick overview of our achievements for the year. In project execution, we're on track to complete about $1.8 million in project work by the end of this year. We have completed or expect to complete 33 of the 49 total projects. That this number also includes acquisition projects for vehicles and equipment. It's about 68-69% progress, understanding we had a list of projects that were on hold for this year. In the contracting space, we accomplished a lot to really focus on providing better formalization to our contracting process, ensuring that any agreements that we have, especially with capital projects, that we have a standard Reston Association agreement. We have 3 versions: a construction agreement, architects and engineers agreement, and a general professional services agreement. All of those are required for capital projects to be used unless there is some very special circumstance that we then review with our legal counsel to determine what the risks are in that space. But the agreements that we have now are definitely favor us as a client in terms of regulating risk and pushing more risk onto our contractors and vendors. So it's definitely been a good process for us to implement this year. And of course, coupled with that, we provided training for all staff associated with any capital project. So if they're involved in making selections and suggesting work, or if they have any correspondence with vendors, we provided a mandatory training for contracting for all 3 of the contracts that are used. And additional staff also have received the benefit of that training, not just focused on capital. So the example is the professional services agreement is used quite frequently for operations projects by Parks and Rec and other departments. So that's been a good benefit for the year. I've really focused to improve our reporting or establish capital projects reporting. So now at monthly fiscal committee meetings, we provide the capital project dashboard and snapshot, which hopefully give a good update of on a monthly basis of where we are with capital projects. And as we got to the latter half of the year, providing forecasting for where we expect to end up with each of those capital projects, and also providing a summary of our multi-year projects that until this year we never really had a single repository to really track total finance and total progress of many of our multi-year capital projects. And what will be coming next is the 5-year capital improvement plan. Now that we have the approved 2018 project list, we're working on finalizing that now for completion by the end of this year. That will at least help to give a good idea of what's in the hopper, so to speak, over the next 5 years for capital and what we expect for everyone to be able to see and make available on the website. Communications and engagement. As you all well know, we implemented the capital projects communication plan to better engage with stakeholders, members, in providing more awareness. Definitely been a benefit for internal staff to really focus on, not just execution of projects, but ensuring that we consider those who are impacted by all of our projects and reach out and make sure everyone is involved and aware of what is going on and what progress we're making or how projects impact them directly. For the 18 look ahead, we're going to focus in 4 general areas. In communications, we look to make more improvements to the capital projects webpage. This year was the first year we even had a capital projects webpage, so now we want to make sure we build on that and add more information, more resources that hopefully will be beneficial to members, increase our communication channels. That's, again, leveraging that communication plan that I mentioned. In contracting, we want to streamline procurement. As you all know, the procurement process that we have in place with the 2017 project list, we have an individual procurement for every single project on that list, even if they're repetitive projects. So the benefit is to try to bundle like projects together. Not only will it help us in making us more efficient internally with procurement, but will possibly make projects a little bit more attractive to some vendors who may not be interested in an individual $10,000 project, but would consider doing 10 projects for $100,000. So that's one benefit that we look to implement, and also on-call service agreements for applicable areas where we have those opportunities to bundle services, get a better cost benefit out of it, in addition to just the procurement cycle improvement. Of course, large projects that we expect to execute and complete in 2018. Completion of the Central Services Facility renovation, as well as completion of the Lake Ann Dock renovation and dredging. You all approved the additional funding for the Lake Ann Dock renovation earlier this year. So combined with the carry forward money that we expect, that I'll touch on in later slides, we will be able to execute that one. We're in a RFP process now with contractors to gain bids and get that project in the hopper and ready to go next year. And then finally, I want to focus on internal collaboration. It is definitely a focus for next year. Now that we have the capital projects department really set, and we have been able to really sort of settle in and really have a good process in place internally, now we're going to start reaching out to other departments like covenants and maintenance to really identify cross-department benefit for not only execution of our capital projects, but identify ways that we can help those departments to become more efficient as well by leveraging the information and specialty that we have within. I do have for you, or it's in your board packet, a summary of the capital projects list, or the end of year snapshot. This is especially in the last weeks of the year, is a living document. I know the text is small, and I believe it is in your board packet, that you may be able to expand a little bit. But I'll just stay high level instead of going all the way through it. As I mentioned, I'll kind of let you see the graphic there on the screen while just going through highlight numbers. As I mentioned, we forecast to end up about 1.7, 1.8 million in completed projects, with a forecast balance of about 2.6 million. Of that, 2.2, 2.3 million being carried forward, with over 500,000 scheduled to return back to the RRF fund. As you can see there on screen is a little bit better summary of the project count. I think in transferring maybe this file to the network, we lost some category names, but the graphic or the pie chart on the far left was our project count. As I mentioned before, the larger portion of the pie are the completed projects, and then the rest of what was underway or is going to carry forward. Most of the carry forward pot of money, 2.3 million, most of those are carry forward projects from last year. And really the majority of that, of course, is the budget for CSF. As you guys well know, CSF was on hold for much of the year, and once we got through the contracting process and finally are getting started, we're really just getting started this month. So at the tail end of the year, that's why there's such a large pot of money in that carry forward number. So we did accomplish a lot, completed most of the projects that we needed to complete this year. CSF being one major one that's going to carry forward and definitely will complete next year, as well as the Lake Ann Dock and Pony Barn. So those are the three top projects, or the largest projects that make up that carry forward balance. I'll go in detail through that carry forward list. So this is a list of what we expect to carry forward. Some may come off this list if our vendors or contractors make really good progress over these last 2-3 weeks of the year. One is 2017 asphalt trails. We have a small amount of money that's left over, and that's really to address punch list items. The contractor did complete the project. There were a few items that we needed to make sure are complete before we made final payment of the remaining contingency or retainage. And of course, because of the cold weather and paving, can't really accomplish much with the temperatures that we have now. So the expectation is that they will be able to come back and finish everything in March, April. If weather breaks sooner than that and we have a few days of warm enough temperatures, they'll come in sooner, complete, and we'll be finished with that project. CSF renovation, we are scheduled to complete the entire project by July based on our current schedule. Bridge projects, bridges 80 and 81 were 2017 bridge replacements. We are just receiving the permits from Fairfax County. So now that we have those permits in hand and we've ordered the physical bridges, we're taking delivery of those on early next week, and we will have a contractor come in and install those too, as well as further down the list, Bridge 79, which was a carry forward project. Pony Barn, probably don't need to cover that now that you all have released funds. We are completing roof replacement this month within the coming week or so, and so luckily residents will see some progress being made there, and we want to make sure we at least shore up that roof before the winter months get going, and we'll be ready to come in when the weather changes to tackle the rest of that project early next year. Pool-based projects. This is, at this moment, an unknown. We're working on trying to schedule, but this is countertop replacements at 3 facilities. If we can, we're looking to try to get those completed before the end of the year, but we're right now at the mercy of the vendors to make sure they have the material, can get it in time, and come on site and install. Hope Road planning, we are now working with the working group to review a few concepts, to get through those, and we'll be back in touch with the board in February to present the working group's findings and recommendations for the master plan. Lake and Dock, as I just mentioned that, look to probably finish that in 2019. And the reason for that is the duration of time that we need to complete the project is about 5 months. Ideally, we would have been able to start, had we known funding was guaranteed, we would have started in October and gotten through demolition, dredging, and construction before the next season begins. Now we kind of have to push that a year and start late 18, anticipating that we'll finish in 2019 so that we don't negatively impact users of Lake Ann Plaza and the boat rentals and all the activities that go on Lake Ann. We want to try to accomplish this in the off season as much as possible. So that's why that's scheduled for 19. Lighting and pathway, that's money that was set aside for an evaluation of lighting. Now that I believe the lighting working group is getting close to finalizing some recommendations and working with other committees, we have that money set aside to bring in a professional to come in and assist with an overall study. Skipping Bridge 79, as I mentioned already. Hunters Woods pathway lighting, same situation. Now that I think we have some recommendations, and there's been more discussion in the community about the need or not in evaluating the impacts to the environment. We have that scheduled for a carry forward for next year to see if we can go ahead and look to accomplish that one. Rec track, main track. Main track, or rec track, as you all know, is completed. Main track is scheduled to move forward early next year. As Vermont Systems, our contractor, mentioned that they were going through an update of the main track software, so that we didn't want to implement a solution there and then have to immediately update it. So their update is supposed to be done at the end of this year, and then we'll be able to apply that update to that project in the coming year. Lake Ann Dam upgrade. Our contractor who's been working with us and the state to determine what we need to do on the Lake Ann Dam to address the high hazard classification. For that project, we assume, or at least from preliminary meetings with the state, we know that we're going to have to do something to the dam to address maintaining that classification. At least initially, it's not likely that we're going to see a reduction in the classification of the dam that would eliminate the need for us to do any retrofit work. So we recommend about $100,000 of the $500,000 that's on the current capital list carry forward for any design that would be needed to figure out how we would implement a solution to address the state's recommendation, and then look in future years to figure out how we're going to implement a project, and also, of course, determine what a real construction cost is. Now it's too early to assume what that exact solution is and what the cost would be. So that is the main difference there that you see. And of course, we recommend the remainder of those funds for that project go back into the funds until we are ready to use them and know what we need to do with them. So
When you say state recommendation, does that really turn into state requirement?
state requirement.
Yeah.
State requirement.
Yeah.
So we could ignore.
Yeah,
not an optional thing, yeah.
Yes. Yep.
They don't give us any money for that, right?
They do not. It is a privately owned dam.
So
However,
They have a state road on top of it.
We did get a grant earlier this year just to support some of the analysis work that's being done, but it's pretty minimal. I think it was about
$10,000.
$7,000.
It's pretty less than 10.
Hey, your road is sinking, VDOT.
Before I jump, any questions on progress?
Just to clarify that the Hunters Woods pathway lighting is on hold until we get the results of the pathway study, right?
Correct.
Excellent.
So as I
Can I
mentioned,
clarify something?
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. When we say, I just want the board members also to understand this, when we say it is returning to the fund, the money is actually already in the reserves. You would have just taken it out to spend it, now you're not going to spend it.
Correct.
So it's really encumbered versus unencumbered.
Right now,
Earlier
that
it was
money-
assigned to a project,
It's currently
a certain
assigned.
amount of money, now it's not, it's available. But it's still sitting in the reserves,
Still there.
it's the same reserves. I just want to,
Doesn't mean we need to spend it.
unencumbered now.
Indeed.
So when he says
No,
it
we
is
don't.
released to the return to the fund, what he means is unencumbered. It's
Unencumbered
not
to the
attached
reserve.
to a project, yeah.
Right.
I just want everybody to understand that.
Yeah, that money will no longer be formally associated with a project that we have scheduled to execute.
Like,
Okay.
thank you.
Which sort of carries me into, I think, related to that item, an issue at CSF. As I think I've brought up before, that we would come back to you all with this information. As a part of the CSF renovation, before initiating demolition on the project, we were asked by, or especially once we got approval to begin, we were asked for our record of asbestos testing. Of course, with the building having been built in 1982, after checking internal archives and with the county, we had no record or no information to provide. So we would move forward with getting an environmental assessment done on the property. That involved the company coming out, taking samples throughout the planned demolition space. And the result is, of course, we have asbestos in many materials. In floor tile, pipe insulation, sink undercoat, roof skylights, pretty much everywhere. And as many of you know, asbestos is a hazardous, can be hazardous when airborne. And of course, with demolition, there's going to be a lot of dust and disturbance of that material. So we need to follow EPA standards to safely remove and address that material before full demolition begins. The projects, or that project needs to be addressed not only for the safety of the contractors who, have to come in and just demo for the scheduled project, but also for the safety of our staff. As we mentioned before, a part of the main office building or CSF building, half of that building will still be in operation with our staff working in the shop areas, whether it's the auto, woodworking shop. So disturbing this material requires special sealing and air handling so that they can still maintain their operations without being negatively impacted by this work. Of course, there's a EPA requirement for us to post a 10-day notice. That will start likely next week. And since it's a private property, we don't have to necessarily halt operations or halt the process to abate the asbestos, but we do need to have specialists come in, formally remove the material in a safe manner, and also have an industrial hygienist to give the thumbs up that the air is clean and clear and ready for general contractors and demolition experts to come in and proceed with the renovation project.
So the staff that will still work there, they're completely, there's no
The,
exposure?
with the solution that the specialists provide, the staff there will be safe and won't be harmed by any of that work.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion. I move to authorize Reston Association staff to use $45,000 of unused 2017 capital funds for asbestos abatement related to the Central Services Facility renovation project.
Second that.
Can I suggest a word change? Yep, as an amendment. Basically, I would like to say that instead of saying 2017 capital funds, let's just say it's coming from the reserves, out of the RRR funds. That is where it's coming out of. So instead of saying it's coming from.
Out of reserve, out of
the reserves,
reserve
out of the
funds.
RRR, yeah, that's it.
Okay,
Simple.
that'll be the motion then,
That'll
out
be
of
the motion.
reserve funds.
That's good.
Yep.
There was a second, any discussion? Ready for a vote?
Asbestos is bad.
Yes.
Aye.
No
All
objection?
those in favor?
Aye.
No objection.
Any opposed?
Next agenda item is the approval of the first quarter items for 2018. So as directed by you all last month, we need to come to you for approval to initiate projects. We have a list of projects that require us to start as early as possible in order to meet our deadlines, mainly for operations purposes. So most of the projects that you see there either address an immediate need that we have, that we want to make sure we get started on, especially when we can take advantage of initiating procurement now, if we know we have the thumbs up. Most of those are aquatics projects, and with the short window that we have between now and opening season, we want to make sure we execute those and don't have any negative impact on the pool schedule in any way. So you have the detailed list there. Again, most of those are pool projects. We did update what was previously titled the Brown's Chapel concession stand and made clarification on that to the restroom and storage facility, as that's really what most of the building is.
Can I ask a question there? Sure. I just have a couple of items to quickly bring up, so we don't have to go through the list, at least I don't have to. So no. Coming back to the Brown's Chapel, the concession stand, who uses it? Because the baseball people tell me that they don't use it. Both the president and the vice president said they don't use it.
They mentioned they don't use the concession stand. People use the restrooms, which you got some photos there for, this is what is in the building. We have unventilated restroom facility. Some materials that, based on our current restroom standards are substandard. We have a lot of water issues. Generally, the restroom facility is disgusting and, is not a proper representation of what Reston Association should be providing for residents and users of facilities. So Hope these photos help to clarify that. The concession stand portion of the building is a small percentage of the total square footage. And right now, as we mentioned before, we more so use that for storage space for camps during the summer.
You said you had other questions?
Yes, one more was the truck. How come it's 72,000 for a truck?
Truck?
Yeah. That much?
Depends on what it
The,
does.
the Ford, 550, 72, 229.
That's a large heavy-duty truck, more like the large work trucks that you see, not a pickup truck.
Not a pickup.
It's got our logo on the side too.
That's right, that's right. The glittery.
All right, so the dredging, Lake Thoreau's, we're gonna take up the lakes and the pools and everything next year, but this is fine, I guess, yeah. Okay.
Dredging's been planned for a
Yeah, the
couple of
dredging,
years.
yeah, we're going forward.
It got
Guys,
pushed
just
back
trying
a
to
year.
get one person talking.
Okay.
Madam President, do we need a motion to change the name of the concession stand so we remove the optics?
It's already removed.
We already did that.
We already
Now,
did
restroom
that.
and storage facility.
Restroom and storage
It's now the
facility.
former concession stand.
The former.
Formerly called,
Helps a
known
lot.
Right.
as
Just
twins.
We're buying 2 court rollers, they're separate, right? That's not a,
They're separate. We have one at each facility.
yeah, fair enough, good.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
You wanna make
all
a
right, good.
motion?
Okay, sure. I move to, where's the motion? Let me read it, yeah. Yeah, sorry, I have to bring it up. Okay, move to authorize Reston Association staff to undertake the following list of capital projects in the first quarter of 2018, as provided to the board.
Second.
Yep.
All
Okay,
in
ready for
favor?
a vote? Any, no discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Oh,
I just want to make a comment. I raised this in the past about the dredging. I just want the board to be aware
mhm,
of how much money we're spending
Yes.
on dredging.
yes,
You know, that's $500,000.
yes.
That's $500,000. If you recall, we had a problem in the South Lakes area where there were sewer lines exposed. That's because of erosion.
Yep.
That's because of poor stormwater management.
Mhm.
All that eroded material becomes dredged material.
Yep.
We as an organization need to work very carefully with the developers to mitigate the amount of stormwater that ends up in those streams and lakes. Because it costs us
A lot of money.
a lot of money.
And,
Noted.
and,
Can we go to a vote?
Go to the vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
thank you, Garrett.
Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you, Garrett.
Madam President?
Break for like
Yes.
5 minutes.
Madam President, can I ask Garrett a question?
You can, we're gonna go on break. You can ask no question now.
No, I think he has a
Go
question
ahead.
for.
So we discussed this, I think, at the BOC, couple of items. I think the board needs to take up at a future date direction to staff to do an inventory of all our facilities to ensure we have the proper documentation for asbestos. And then based upon that, they can give us a plan of action. Okay, and part of that would be if there's a facility that we have that's going to need some action, where it is in the reserve fund, when it is scheduled, so that we can take that up as a plan of action. Okay?
Yeah.
Do we need a motion for that?
Well, that's my question. Do we need a motion for that? If so, so moved.
I don't think so.
I don't
I don't think
No,
so.
We are, just for, and I do appreciate the fact that you brought that up, Director Bowman, at our VOC, and we have already undertaken that.
Okay.
For things as they come up on the
Okay.
list to make sure that we address that.
And the other comment, which I shared earlier in the BOC, is I'd like to see the project plans for each of the capital projects include a wrap-up task or towards the end of the project where it provides feedback to the reserve study on what is the new life expectancy of the facility and when the cost for it should be accounted for. It's a review for that process.
Yes.
Like
We
a
do have that
recalibration.
as part of our financial closeout.
Yeah.
The finance department actually, once we finish a project and say, okay, this capital project is now done, the first question that they have for us is to clarify the assets that were touched, and then we provide them with the useful life estimate
Useful life.
for each
Right.
item, and that's
It's part of the depreciation.
held in the database.
Thank you.
Thank
And-
you, Garrett.
And will be part of the new reserve study as well.
It will be updated in the 19 reserve study.
I would propose that we take a 10-minute bio break.
Yep.
And we'll be back in
10.
10.
10 minutes.
And
Not
we're going to
11.
finish by 10.
We are going to finish by 10.
Oh, for
our
sure.
We will
Oh,
finish
for sure.
before 10,
Yes.
hopefully. Yes.
We're up to that challenge.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. For those of you that are sticking with us, thank you. Larry,
Yes,
it's your show.
I'm looking for the clicker. I'm only up here for 2 seconds, and I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey. First part. So we have a little bit of a tag team here.
Okay.
I'm only doing the introduction, and then Kelsey's going to get up and talk about the building repurposing amendment.
Perfect.
I'm going to give you some project updates, and then we're going to turn it over to Director Mooney to talk about the Transportation Service District Advisory Board.
Okay.
So we've got kind of a three-fer here, so I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey.
Thank you. So I'm just going to touch on the most recent activity on the Comprehensive Plan Amendment guidelines for building repurposing. All of you received a memo from John McBride that summarized the outcomes of the December 5th Board of Supervisors meeting. And as you know, the Board of Supervisors unanimously approved the plan amendment. So in Reston, that will apply to the transit station areas. And this board and RA staff had concerns about including the Reston TSAs in the amendment. The concern was that the office to residential conversion option permitted by the amendment could potentially add thousands of unplanned residential units into the TSAs not previously contemplated by the comprehensive plan. The concerns were addressed prior to the board taking the action. They were addressed on the legislative record by the supervisor and county staff. They stated that the policy plan amendment does not authorize or recommend any additional residential units in Reston beyond the target development level of 44,000 new and existing residential units in the TSA areas. And that is captured on page 102 of the comprehensive plan. Following the approval of the amendment, there was a board directive, which was to county staff to expedite the process to further the amendment, to expand to all areas of the county, and also consider the conversion of other types of buildings. So beyond office buildings, what other types of buildings might be available for repurposing in all areas of the county. So here, sorry, it's a little small, but this is where in the comprehensive plan it states that target level of new and existing residential units. And like I mentioned, that's 44,000. So in response to both the approved amendment and the board directive, staff would like to undertake the following activities. First is to obtain the full legislative record of the meeting for the RA land use records. Second, we plan in coordination with county staff to prepare and monitor a tabulation of the existing and new zoning approved total number of residential units. And this would be used to track against that target level of 44,000 units. And then lastly, we would like to monitor and implement, monitor the implementation of the Board of Supervisors directive, which is to expand the scope of the application of the building repurposing policy plan, and then also to keep RA informed of what the potential ramifications of that might be. And this is going to be a staff-led effort, and we are looking to coordinate with Land Use Council only on an as-needed basis.
So Kelsey, what will the process be then if an office building owner wants to redevelop that into residential? What do they have to go through?
So if they're within the TSAs, and so without the amendment, what would happen is if you have an office building in an area that's designated as office on the land use plan, so designated by the comprehensive plan as office uses, you would have to go, if you wanted to convert to residential, you would have to amend the plan. So you have to go through a replanning process, and then you would move into a rezoning process to allow the use of residential in the building. With this amendment, you don't have to do the replanning process. So they get to skip that step. It's found in, so repurposing the building is found in conformance with the comprehensive plan by this policy amendment. And then they do have to go through a rezoning process. So the rezoning process includes a lot of public input processes as well. So just like any other development project, we would be tracking it and informing the community about it, and also providing our input and encouraging residents to provide their input as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Kelsey, to accomplish the three things that you want to do, are you proposing a motion? Is there a motion that we can make?
I think we were
Kate, do you
Go
mind
do.
chiming in?
One of the things that I did as soon as we received the direction from John or recommendations from John McBride is to push that out to you all immediately and ask if there were any objections.
Right,
And
okay.
with the exception of Director Bowman, who made a good point about we need to watch our spending on recommendation 3.
Right.
That which internally we said, we're going to be doing the monitoring and we'll call when we need help. And that's probably going to come in the form of a motion to you if we need to take some specific action with regard to.
So you have sufficient direction at this point?
I
from-
believe we do, unless if there are any concerns about.
I submitted, as you probably may recall from my email, that number 1 and 2 are in the job description.
Right.
Right,
You
but the
know,
monitoring by the
Right.
outside counsel, it's.
Because otherwise, they wouldn't be standing here telling us about it.
Right.
Having a budget around that.
Okay.
So there's no action to take here.
No.
No, we should be okay, and we'll monitor, and if we need to come back and ask for permission to do something, we will do that, or for the board to take an action.
Okay.
Any further.
Yep. Good. Good update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent,
Thank you.
Kelsey. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not as happy as Larry.
Thank you.
Very, very true. All right, what I want to do is cover a couple projects. I think you've heard of most of these or seen materials about them before. I just want to give you some updates. First one we're going to talk about is 1801 Old Reston Avenue. It's a Renaissance Centro project. This is, we'll zoom in a little bit more here. This is the old bank building just south of the Harrison, just north of Stratford. It borders Reston Town Center Association and Reston Association. And the applicant has committed to neither. What they have stated is that whomever they do commit to, they will go to that organization's design review board. And we have had discussions with the applicant and the applicant's attorney, and of course we're making a pitch for them to join Reston Association. What's interesting about this project, let me get to this. This is one of the better visuals created by an applicant for planning and zoning committee meeting in this case. The building we're talking about, and this pointer does not work, but if you know where the Harrison is, kind of on the right side, the Stratford on the left, that 20-story proposed condo building in the center is what is being proposed. What's interesting about this is that it's a 1.5 acre site, and they are proposing to zone this to PRM, but the minimum district size is 2 acres. So a lot of the complaints from, in particular, the residents of the Stratford have come that it's too small for this kind of development. So what they're proposing is a very vertical development to try to save as much of the footprint for planting and plaza, and also to actually increase the streetscape on the Reston Parkway side of what's currently there by that little bank building. The other interesting thing, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up, is that this received an unfavorable vote at the Planning and Zoning Committee, and it also received an unfavorable recommendation of denial from the planning staff, Fairfax County staff. And the applicant went ahead and took it to the Planning Commission, and there were a fair number of comments about it, in particular because of the density and so forth, although it does meet the comp plan recommendation, just not the minimum lot size essentially for that rezoning. And this has been deferred to January by the Planning Commission for decision only. And I believe our Multimodal Transportation Advisory Committee may be coming forward to you in January to talk a little bit more about this specific project. And that would be in advance of any hearings and so forth in front of the Board of Supervisors. But it's an interesting one because very rarely do you get a no vote from Planning and Zoning and a negative staff report, and you go forward to the Planning Commission. The primary reason that it received an unfavorable vote from the planning staff because of the workforce dwelling units. Just there's a discrepancy between the size of the units that the workforce dwelling units would be versus the market rate units, and the applicant believes they're going to be able to work it out, hence why they went to the Planning Commission. And I suspect between now and the end of January, when it goes back for decision, there's going to be a whole lot more conversations amongst the applicant and the planning staff of the Planning Commission. So it's just an interesting kind of setup here.
A question about
sorry.
RTC and our own RA responsibility for design review and whatnot. What's that discussion? What do we offer? What do they offer?
Well, for us, in terms of membership, we offer the whole suite of amenities that you all have talked at length about tonight, and programs for that matter. Town Center, I don't know exactly what they offer. They don't have any outdoor facilities and so forth. I don't believe they have really many programs, you know, for the future residents. On the design review side, you know, they're actually similar bodies in that respect. I mean, pretty high standards at Town Center, high standards in Reston. They just haven't made a commitment either way.
Why would they not come to RA?
Probably because the Reston Town Center Association assessment is way smaller than Reston Association's, in part because they offer very little. Julie.
You mentioned that for the size of the footprint, the number of residents in a 20-story building doesn't jive, right? It's too many?
No, it's the footprint, the lot size is 1.5 acres.
Right, and you
So
said
they're
it needs to be
proposing
2 point
about 100
something.
units per acre. But the minimum lot size for that zoning district is 2 acres. And so they have asked for a modification of the lot size to be able to permit this building.
So it's not like they could lop it off to 15 stories versus
Well, they could.
20 and.
Well, they certainly
make
could,
it-
yes. And that's one of the major concerns
How
of the
tall
neighbors.
is Harrison?
The Harrison, I think, is 15 stories. Stratford is 14, and this is 20.
Yeah.
And that gives you a perspective. And the gray blockouts in the rear of this visual are the ones being built right now, the Signature, directly on the other side of Reston Parkway, and the others are Spectrum, where Harrison, Best Buy, and so forth are. You know, in terms of what plans are there now.
It's worth noting that the applicant on this project is the owner of the Harrison.
Yes.
And the Harrison is within the RA.
Yeah.
Correct. And they also developed Stratford.
Correct. Right.
So,
Okay, next.
all right, next. All right, let's move elsewhere in Reston. You've heard about this project as well. This is off Roland Clark Place. This is 1941, 1950 Roland Clark Place. This is, let me zoom in a little bit more. This is an interesting parcel. It's actually 2 parcels at the end of Roland Clark. If you're familiar with that, the Seacus townhomes are being built at the front on Sunrise Valley Drive. I'll talk about the project on the other side there in just a minute. So these are 2 lots at the back that border the toll road, which is on the top of this slide here. And originally, the applicant came in to rezone this to PRM, and the county was unfavorable about that. This is currently in the PRC district. So they have come back and resubmitted to keep it in PRC, and it's entirely residential. The comp plan guidance for this site suggests a mix of 75 residential, 25% other uses, retail or office or so forth. The problem is that right now the density here is, let's just say, roughly 100 units per acre. And as you know from the PRC ordinance, the cap is 50 units per acre. So I asked the applicant's representative at a P&Z meeting how those don't jive, so how is that going to be rectified? And the answer I got was simply, well, we'll either wait for the PRC ordinance to be amended or we'll rezone it to PRM. And that was kind of the response that was long-winded, but that was essentially the response that I got to that question. So this one we are going to follow very, very closely, because this was one of the ones that county planning staff acknowledged when asked at a meeting. I can't remember if it was me or Tammy that asked, but it was, what projects are driving the immediate need for a change in the density cap and the change in the PRC ordinance. And they said Reston Town Center North, Reston Gateway, the Boston Properties Project, and this one at Roland Clark Place. So this one obviously is of keen interest to the entire community to see where this goes and if the applicant has any success moving this through, despite the fact that the ordinance has not changed, and we hope it certainly doesn't change to accommodate this level of development. So, close by,
Could,
John?
do you have the ability to zoom in on the map? If not,
No.
well, so visualize, you got Seacus on the left-hand, bottom left-hand, another development on the bottom right-hand there, and those front Sunrise Valley. P and Z, there was a fair amount of concern in P and Z. You got all of those people coming out of that one
Yeah.
stoplight
Yeah.
on the
Yep.
Sunrise Valley now.
Yep.
So P and Z is aware of that transportation problem. I don't think anybody has a solution other than
Don't build that.
don't do 100 units per acre, but
What is this supposed to
Call
be?
me
High
crazy.
rise? What is this supposed to be? High rises or
They are mid to high rise.
mid?
yeah.
7, 8 stories, parking structures, of course. And quite frankly, very little open space, usable open space. So you'll actually get another perspective on that when I go to this next one. And these are more FYI. So this is this is an older photograph. We didn't do a drone flight because that building circled there is gone. That was that angular building on
Right.
Sunrise Valley Drive. Just to the right of that red box is the former API building where the Seacus homes are being developed right now.
Yep.
To kind of bring you to perspective. The application I was just talking about are those two buildings to the upper right, bordering Toll Road.
Here.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. Yeah, so that's the one that was just proposed for the higher density. But I want to talk about this one. This is a Toll Brothers project. We had some recent meetings with them, and they are interested in bringing these 54 for-sale units into Reston Association as full members. We're working with them right now on the terms for that. I anticipate you'll be hearing the details about this in January, no later than February. And they intend, their site plan is in with the county right now, and I think they're looking at actually having a model open midsummer this coming year. And so this is one you'll hear more about. I just want to give you a little heads up on that. And then we're going to move over closer to the Wheelie Station, a red circle there. And this is the lofts at Reston Station. This is Pulte. This is the first of all the development that's been proposed to the east of Wheelie. Okay, there's a whole lot going on at the west, Boulevard, Reston Station, and all that. This is the first one that is actually underway in this area. To give you a little perspective, on the left is Wheelie Avenue, and everything between the red box and Wheelie Avenue, well, the vast majority of that is the JBG EYA, or what they call the Midline Project, and that'll be coming to, I think, the Planning Commission in January or February?
We're not going to be able to get on.
Just got bumped to March, okay.
Right.
Thank
The
you.
University District.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Yes, when we cared about learning.
So this is a relatively small project. They're actually out working on the site right now. There's just another perspective. This is the townhouse portion of it, and then at the rear is the condo building. And we also anticipate bringing this to you because Pulte hasn't expressed an interest as well, because these are for sale units, of having them join the Reston Association. So
Bring them on in.
we're excited about those two developments coming forward. And I should have done this one first because this is a less good story. But another project that you're familiar with, this is over on Sunrise Valley as well.
Oh, yeah.
This is here.
This is under construction
Right next to my building.
right now, really right across from where the Kensington is proposed, or very close to that. And if you see this, the little triangle kind of at the bottom of the screen there, that is what is under development right adjacent to Association Drive. They recently started the clearing, got the fencing up and so forth. And this is Lincoln Commerce at the Commerce Executive Center. This is a rendering that they've got. And, as Tammy and others have noted at, meetings about, hey, the north side of Sunrise Valley is where all this is happening. Well, it is now happening, and this is a large building. The part about this, Kate and I had discussions with them in mid-2016 about joining the association. These are all rental units, and we got virtually no traction on that. And the proper language for this particular development is, shall we say, not as tight as we would like it to be. And it really only requires them to petition the association for membership once they go to condo. Nothing really before that. So this one is unfortunately kind of out the door. It's unfortunate, and we hope to not have that happen again. But again, as you've heard me say, and John McBride as well, is that the straight rental projects, it is a much tougher sell than the for sale units. But we're going to keep plugging away at that.
Larry, why did this get away from us? What happened?
It's not that it got away, Mike. I think it's simply that the applicant is not required to join RA or the Town Center Association, and each developer has their own set of financials in terms of what their upfront costs are, their carrying costs while they're on construction loan and then turning units over, and just unsuccessful here.
What could we do differently?
That's an excellent question.
I'm not quite sure what we could have done differently on this. It's, we do our best to have the conversation. Ultimately, it is up to the developer. So you can see we've had some success. We're having success, but I'm not.
I guess I'm always nervous. If one doesn't, then perhaps the next, the
Correct.
next, and so.
I frankly, it really has to do with the proffer language that goes in, and that is the answer. It's what is the standard proffer language for these developments as they go in?
We provide standard proffer
And
language.
we do. We have.
The county probably has some say.
Quite a bit.
We're working cooperatively with them to advance membership in the Reston Association.
And it's been a principle, or at least that's what they've said, that they want all residential units to be a member of the Reston Association or the Reston Town Center, right?
That is correct.
But there's no policy, I'm assuming, that the county has to that effect.
It's not that it's not a policy. I think it's mentioned about 11 times in the comprehensive plan, something along those lines. But the county nor anyone else can force a property owner to subject their property to a set of covenants.
I think this is something that we should be very aware of and stay right on top.
Indeed.
That is why we were here every month.
So you've had pretty good success from Soapstone towards RA headquarters.
Well, and again, it's the for sale units. That is
Right.
That's just it's an easier economics for the developer.
Yeah, this unit comes with an assessment. Yeah.
Any more, Larry?
Not for me. I'm going to turn it over to the third part of our program. I will ask Director Mooney to.
Hey, John, you're on.
Thank you, and I'll be quick.
5 minutes, right?
I'll make it 5 minutes. So this,
3 or 4 slides. Right?
okay, this report is prompted by the inaugural meeting on November 30th of the Reston Transportation Service District Advisory Board, which was a board established by Fairfax County Board of Supervisors to advise them on what to do with the, especially the grid of streets, as it's called, and I'll explain that a bit more. So the grid of streets in the TSAs, okay? So this arose out of the phase 1 of the comprehensive plan amendment, which phase 1, as you know, was about the TSA areas of Reston. And one of the concerns was that we needed a transportation plan and study to service the new development that was anticipated in the TSAs. We went through RNAG, the Reston Network Analysis Group work for several years. A plan was, as we will remember, was adopted, I think, last April or so to fund the transportation projects within the TSA, especially in the grid of streets, because I'll get to that in a bit. But so it generates 139 million over a 40-year period for funding improvements in the so-called Reston funding plan. Now that includes three levels of improvements. One are the 10 major roadway improvements. So we all know about the Soapstone overpass, for example, which is number one on that list, 10 other things. Then there are quicker, easier intersection improvements, and then there's the grid of streets, which is near the transit station areas. And the way they plan on funding these various things are the whole transportation plan is by a combination of federal, state, county, regional, and private funding. So they established the Reston Transportation Service District Advisory Board most specifically, but not exclusively, to advise them on the assessments that should be charged to developers to fund the development of the grid of streets. Okay, so I'm trying to find, and all of this is found in the board packet. If you saw the PowerPoint that was used.
This 2 cents is actually for the people living in that area.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
2 cents.
So part of it is done by in-kind funding of developers who will actually develop some of the streets.
Yeah.
And the balance of it is to be developed by the people who develop, who build projects there.
And this was, if I can quickly comment on that, because I've followed this when I was at RCA. So this is something that, from a public perspective, there was a lot of pushback to have the county and the developers fund the whole thing as opposed to asking the people to pay, a tax, because it's unfortunate. We've not had that impact. But
right. I think the developers
they should have paid for it.
Right. So the developers will be able to pass on to those who buy.
Exactly. Yes.
In the area, their
Would have been,
costs. So basically, of the $1.02 billion that are anticipated to be funded, the developers will do in-kind construction of $716 million, and the service district will fund $305 million.
Mm-hmm.
And so the primary task of this committee is to advise the Board of Supervisors on an annual basis in the spring of whether there needs to be a change in the current assessment. The current assessment is $2,090 per residential unit and $9.56 for non-residential square footage. However, three interesting things that I found significant. One is that Tom Bezodny, the Director of Transportation, in our inaugural meeting said, first of all, the grid of streets is not fixed. So we all know that we have a concern about one such street, the unnamed street that is supposed to cut through Hidden Creek Golf Course. So, but Tom very deliberately said the grid is not fixed. Secondly, he stated that staff believed, Fairfax County staff that is, believed that the service district assessment rate would not have to rise above what is the predicted rate here. They feel fairly confident about it, more confident than they felt about a similar rate in Tyson's Corner. And thirdly, when he talked about slide 27 in this presentation, which will be available to anyone who gets online on the RA website, Tom made a point of saying that the board's duty is not just to recommend annually the assessment rate to the board, but he wants them to to advise the Board of Supervisors, that is, on a prioritization of the projects, and also to review and help update the funding plan. Some of the people who would like to think this was nailed down completely reacted to that and said, well, it's really just about setting the rate. And Tom said, no, second time, no, it's really about advising us on the broader things, the broader questions. So what that says to me is that this could be a useful tool for us to get put into the process. I will note that Maggie Parker, whom many of us know, was elected chair, and our own Kelly Westenhoff was elected vice chair. And a local businessman, Ann Mader, was elected secretary. So, yes?
You mentioned that he said that the grid of streets isn't necessarily cast in concrete.
Say that again now?
You said something about the streets, that they're not fixed?
The grid of streets. So the grid of streets that, indicate how they're going to...
Right. You're saying that that's still...
It is not fixed. It's flexible. So that can be ominous, but it also can be favorable that they're open to reconsidering the grid of streets, and the one that we are especially concerned about is the one through the Hidden Creek Golf Course.
Wasn't ever, nobody can explain how it got into the plan?
It appeared in the comprehensive plan, not by name, but by a line, after the community process was over.
Right.
This happened after the plan amendments. Our plan was finalized. Tammy has a comment, I think. Tammy.
Real briefly, I have to comment on this. That road to nowhere should be now known as the road to ruin, number one. Number two, my question is, why is there a grid of streets north of Sunset Hills Road? There's no grid needed there. That is not one of the areas where the grid is appropriate. So that should be our sticking point. There should be no grid there. And just when our NAGWA came through, we were told over and over the grid that was not going to be constructed by actual developers putting up buildings, and they're required to pay for their roads around their buildings. This grid was in the ends of the district where no development was going to be made for a long, long time. Well, then why do you need streets there? So, but anyway, north of Sunset, where that road to ruin is going through the golf course, there shouldn't be a grid there to begin with. That's a false assumption. And they're just thinking we're going to let that go. So that should be the starting point there. Yeah. That's ineligible for their grid.
And let me comment on the second bullet there, and I'm not sure how that 139 million. It's actually the total transportation plan over 40 years
is from the tax.
is almost 2.3 billion. Or 2.3 billion.
The 139 is from the tax itself.
Okay.
That's from the people, from the residents.
Yeah.
That's my recollection.
Yeah. But it's not for the whole
Not just residents, it's property owners.
Property owners, basically.
John, are you looking for
That's really what I thought.
input? Are you just
No,
informing us?
I just wanted to let you know that the inaugural meeting has been held.
Okay.
And we will, the meeting plan is once in the fall, twice in the spring, leading to a recommendation in the spring to the Fairfax County Board of Directors. And Kelly and I will keep you all apprised. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, especially if there's a place that already needs to insert ourselves in a bigger kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Okay. So on to the board governance.
Okay, this is going to be very short. The Governance Committee met yet again on Tuesday, and with the help of members Erwin Flashman and Steve Canner, we're pretty close to finalizing a conflict of interest policy, and here is the plan. I just want to announce it. Before the end of 2017, we should be able to send to the RA Board the draft Code of Ethics and the Conflict of Interest Policy for consideration later in January of 2018. We are requesting that the board have a work session on the draft Code of Ethics and the revised COA policy on the afternoon before the January board meeting. It would be from 3 to 6. The board meeting starts at 6:30 for just comments and analysis of the Code of Ethics and the COI policy. The further plan would be for public input to take place during February and further comment by the public at the February 22nd board meeting, and that we would ratify both documents during the March 22nd board meeting. And the hope is that before the new board takes office, that this be in place and taken care of.
Right.
I just want to commend David and John, Mooney, Victoria.
And Victoria.
For moving this thing along. And so my hope is that this board will stick to the schedule. In our discussion, I'd asked what the schedule was, and I know it sounds ambitious, but I think it's doable. Don't you think?
So you can vote on it on your last board meeting.
Absolutely.
Last thing you
Go.
do, mic drop and then go.
Please, that would be a gift. I'd appreciate that.
So if you just note that we are looking at this work session from 3 to 6 at the next board meeting on January 25th.
Thanks for your support, Eric. Appreciate that.
And that's that.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Irwin.
Thank you, Erwin.
Thank you. We're going to elect you to this board, sir.
That's it?
That's it.
All right, we're almost back on schedule, guys. How about that? Okay, so we, at this point, need to have a motion to move into executive session to discuss personnel matters.
I move that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So guys, we're going to move into executive session. Thanks for coming out.
Yep.
Mic's off.